Welcome to Zin the Storyteller, where mysterious tales and unsolved enigmas come to light. Today, we will dive into a world of haunting and terror, haunted castles. Castles are not only symbols of power and wealth, but also enigmatic places where darkness and history intertwine, creating stories that neither time nor space can erase. From grand, majestic castles to ancient ruins, each site holds wandering spirits and bizarre events that science cannot explain. In this video, you will embark on midnight journeys, walk through shadowy corridors, and uncover the secrets behind the world's most famous haunted castles. Prepare yourself, for not everything you see or hear is true. But one thing is certain: these ghosts won't let you leave without leaving a mark. Monte Cristo, the deadly secrets of a haunted mansion. Today, we will step through the doors of Monte Cristo Homestead, an old, majestic house in the small town of Junee, New South Wales, Australia. Don't let its enchanting exterior fool you. Inside, time seems to have stopped, and every corner appears to hold the last breaths of spirits that have never moved on. Monte Cristo, splendor and curse. Let's rewind to 1884, when Christopher William Crawley, a successful businessman, decided to build Monte Cristo Homestead. The house was designed in Victorian style, with high ceilings, large windows, and wooden balconies overlooking vast fields. It symbolized wealth and power, but also became the place where darkness began to seep into the Crawley family's life. Christopher Crawley was described as an ambitious man, but rumors suggested his wealth was not entirely clean. Some believe he had sold his soul for success. After his death in 1910 from a heart attack, his widow, Elizabeth Crawley, withdrew into complete isolation. For 23 years, she left her room only twice. She always held a Bible in her hands, her eyes filled with fear, as if trying to escape an invisible force. When she passed away, her room was found locked, and mysterious scratch marks on the window hinted she had struggled against something or someone in her final days. The death of little Sarah, the never-ending cry. The story of little Sarah's death is one of the most haunting tragedies at Monte Cristo. It wasn't just a heartbreaking accident, but also tied to supernatural phenomena that chilled many to the bone. To understand it, we must return to a fateful night in the early 20th century when the Crawley family still lived there. Sarah, only 5 years old at the time, was the youngest child of the Crawley family. She was dearly loved and cared for by a middle-aged nanny whom the family trusted completely. But no one could have imagined that this nanny would become central to a horrifying event that remains unexplained. It was a quiet night. The atmosphere in Monte Cristo was as heavy as ever. The dim light of oil lamps flickered through thick glass windows, and the entire house was steeped in unsettling silence. Sarah was playing on the second floor with her favorite rag doll. The nanny sat nearby, quietly watching her. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room seemed to change. The nanny later said she felt an invisible presence, a chilling sensation running down her spine. Sarah turned around and smiled at her. "Mississippi, someone is watching us from the stairs." The nanny, startled, turned towards the stairs, but saw no one. She tried to reassure Sarah, thinking it was just the child's imagination. But then, she heard a voice. "Take her down the stairs. Right now." The nanny trembled as she recounted the voice later, saying it wasn't loud, but clear enough to be undeniable. She tried to ignore it, but the voice repeated, more urgent this time, "Push her. Now." The nanny stood up abruptly, moving toward little Sarah in what she described as an uncontrollable state. Sarah looked up, her innocent eyes wide, still clutching her doll. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice full of concern. No one knows what happened in the next few seconds. A blood-curdling scream shattered the house's silence. When the Crawley family rushed to the scene, they found Sarah lying motionless at the bottom of the wooden staircase, blood pooling around her head on the cold stone floor. The nanny stood on the stairs, trembling, her eyes vacant, muttering incoherent phrases. When asked what had happened, she said only one thing: "It wasn't me. The voice told me to do it." Sarah's death shocked the entire town of Juni. The nanny was immediately arrested and interrogated. Initially, she adamantly claimed her innocence, insisting that a mysterious voice had taken over her mind. The police, of course, didn't believe her, dismissing it as an excuse to cover a cruel act. However, there was no evidence suggesting the nanny had any motive to harm Sarah. Residents of the mansion began reporting strange phenomena that night. A gardener claimed to hear heavy footsteps on the staircase, but when he checked, the stairs were empty. Another servant swore she saw a faint, shadowy figure at the top of the stairs, but it disappeared in an instant. These accounts only deepened the mystery. After Sarah's death, Monte Cristo's main staircase became the focal point of many strange occurrences. Some visitors reported hearing the laughter of a child echoing from somewhere. But when they searched, no one was there. A tourist named Laura recounted feeling someone tug lightly on her sleeve as she climbed the stairs. When she turned around, no one was there, but she immediately felt an icy chill run down her spine. Another couple, while taking photos of the staircase, discovered an image of a faint white shadow, resembling a child, standing in the middle of the stairs. The photo later spread widely among paranormal enthusiasts, solidifying Monte Cristo's reputation as Australia's most haunted house. Today, many believe Sarah's spirit still lingers on the main staircase of Monte Cristo. Some think she is seeking comfort, while others believe she is trapped by the very malevolent entity responsible for her death. Sarah's story serves as a chilling reminder that Monte Cristo is not just a historic mansion, but a place where time, space, and wandering souls intertwine in perpetual chaos. Would you dare to step onto that staircase? And if you hear the sound of children's laughter or feel a gentle tug on your sleeve, you might have met Sarah. But beware, not everything there is harmless. The tragedy of Maid Mary, the scream from the balcony, among the bloody and mysterious stories surrounding the Monte Cristo mansion. The death of Maid Mary remains one of the tragedies that sends chills down listeners' spines. It was not just an unfortunate accident, but also linked to supernatural events that, to this day, no one can explain. Let's revisit that fateful evening, a cold and silent night in July 1908. Mary, only 17 years old, was a young, lively girl known for her dedication and her smile that never left her face. Even though working as a maid at Monte Cristo was far from easy, she often worked late, cleaning the large house under the dim light of oil lamps. For Mary, Monte Cristo was both magnificent and terrifying, with long, dark hallways and an atmosphere that always made her feel suffocated. That night, Mrs. Elizabeth Crawley, the widow of Mr. Christopher Crawley, the master of the house, called Mary to the second-floor balcony. Her voice was cold and stern. As usual, Mary, clean the balcony. I don't want to see a speck of dust when the guests arrive tomorrow morning. Mary nodded, her hands trembling. The second-floor balcony was always the place where she felt most uneasy. Since working here, Mary had heard other servants tell stories of inexplicable events happening on that balcony, but she didn't dare disobey Mrs. Crawley's orders. With a cloth and a small oil lamp in hand, Mary climbed the wooden stairs to the balcony. The cold air seemed to seep into her every seam, and the darkness here felt even thicker. She had just begun to wipe down the balcony's railing when a sharp chill ran down her spine. Suddenly, Mary heard footsteps, very faint, very quiet, as though someone was approaching her. "Is someone there?" Mary asked, but only silence answered. She took a deep breath, telling herself that it was just the wind blowing through the hallway. But then, a whisper echoed right beside her ear. "Don't look back, don't look down." Mary froze. Her entire body stiffened. The voice, it wasn't like anyone she had ever heard. It was vague, deep, and so cold that it made her heart race. She turned her head to look around, but saw no one, only darkness, utter silence. "It's just my imagination," Mary reassured herself, but her hands were shaking, struggling to hold onto the cloth. Then, once again, the voice spoke, this time clearer, stronger. I told you don't look down!" Mary screamed, dropping the oil lamp. The small flame extinguished as it hit the floor. She felt as though someone had touched her shoulder. Not a gentle touch, but a strong shove. Mary's scream tore through the stillness of the night, echoing through the mansion. A loud thud followed as her body crashed to the hard ground below. The other servants and Mrs. Crawley rushed to the scene. They saw Mary lying motionless at the foot of the balcony, her eyes wide open in absolute terror. It seemed she had seen something before she died, something that the living should never see. Mrs. Crawley coldly ordered the servants to remove Mary's body, but no one could explain what had happened. Had Mary fallen? Or had someone or something pushed her? Soon after Mary's death, strange occurrences began to happen on the second-floor balcony. The servants claimed they often heard footsteps late at night, even though the balcony was completely empty. Some even insisted they saw the shadow of a young girl standing there, gazing sadly down at the ground below, the place where Mary's body had once lain. A maid named Clara, who was hired after Mary's death, recounted that she once heard the whisper while cleaning near the balcony. "I told you not to look down." Clara quit after just a week, claiming that Monte Cristo was no place for the living. The eerie phenomena on the balcony didn't just happen to those living at Monte Cristo. Tourists visiting the mansion were not exempt from frightening experiences. A man named Peter, during a night tour, decided to linger longer at the balcony to take photos. As he raised his camera, he felt a sharp coldness sweep through him. But what terrified him the most was the sensation of an invisible hand resting on his shoulder. "I turned around, but there was no one there," Peter recalled. "But when I checked the photo, I saw a faint figure, like a young girl standing right behind me. She was staring directly at the camera. In that gaze, it was unforgettable." Today, the second-floor balcony of the Monte Cristo mansion remains a place that sends a chill down many spines. Those who participate in the night tour report hearing whispers, footsteps, and sometimes the feeling of being watched while standing there. Some even claim to feel a gentle push when they approach the edge of the balcony, as if some force is trying to recreate the death of Mary. But where does this push come from? Is someone protecting the secrets of Monte Cristo? Or is Mary's soul still trapped, desperately seeking the truth about her death? Whatever the answer, the second-floor balcony will forever serve as a reminder that Monte Cristo is not just an old house, but a place where darkness always lurks in every corner. Would you dare to step onto that balcony? And if you hear a whisper, would you turn around? Tourists and their terrifying experiences. Many years later, Monte Cristo became a famous tourist destination, but not everyone dares to stay for too long. A photographer named Daniel recounted that when he joined a night tour there, he decided to take a photo on the second-floor balcony, the place where Mary had died. "When I raised my camera, I felt like someone was standing right behind me," Daniel said. "I turned around, but there was no one. However, when I checked the photo, I saw the shadow of a young girl, with a pale face and empty eyes, standing right next to the balcony door." Daniel never returned to Monte Cristo again. Today, Monte Cristo is open as a private museum. Night tours allow visitors to explore the mansion in dim light. But not everyone is brave enough to join. Those who leave say they feel heavy, short of breath, or as if they are being watched. Monte Cristo is not just a house. It is where tragedy and darkness intersect. If you have the chance to visit, walk carefully. And if you hear whispers or feel a cold breeze brush past you, don't look back. Borley Rectory, the most haunted house in England. After my journey to Monte Cristo in Australia, today I will take you to another place, a place known as the most haunted house in England. This is not just a horror story, but a mystery that has lasted for decades. With supernatural phenomena that even the bravest of souls would find terrifying, let's step through the doors of Borley Rectory, located in Essex, England. But be careful. Once you enter, you won't be able to forget what awaits inside. Borley Rectory, the House of Mystery. Borley Rectory was built in 1862 by Father Henry Bull, a local priest, on land that once belonged to an ancient monastery. From the moment its foundations were laid. The place has been associated with eerie rumors. Locals tell that many centuries ago, a young nun had a romantic relationship with a monk from the nearby monastery. When the affair was discovered, the girl was sentenced to death, and the monk was severely punished. It is said that her spirit still wanders the land, seeking atonement for her sins from the very beginning of its construction. Strange occurrences started to happen: unexplained footsteps, fleeting shadows, and a heavy atmosphere constantly enveloped the house. The Bull family and the strange phenomena, darkness begins. Borley Rectory was not an ordinary place from the moment it was built. It was a place where darkness and the mysteries of the past seemed to always lurk, waiting for the right moment to rise. And no one understood this more than the Bull family, the first residents of the mansion, who were also the first witnesses to the strange and eerie phenomena that would later make Borley Rectory the most haunted house in England from the early days of living in Borley Rectory. Father Henry Bull, the man who built the mansion, sensed something unusual. He was a strict clergyman and was not one to easily believe in supernatural stories. However, one night, while reading prayers in his study, he heard a knocking sound on the window. He looked up, glanced outside, and saw the silhouette of a woman dressed in religious robes standing in the garden. Her face was obscured by the darkness, but her sorrowful and silent figure kept his gaze fixed. "What do you need?" he asked. But the figure did not respond. Only a few seconds later, she vanished as if she had never appeared, thinking that he was tired and seeing things. Father Henry did not tell anyone about this, but this was just the beginning of the phenomena that his family was about to face. Harry Bull, the son of Father Henry, inherited Borley Rectory after his father's death. Harry was an open-minded man, always believing that everything could be explained scientifically. But what happened here gradually shook his faith one night. While Harry was walking in the garden of the mansion, he heard footsteps crunching on the gravel path in front. At first, he thought it was a local person passing by, but when he turned around, he saw a woman in a black cloak, with a slender figure, silently walking down the path. "Hello, do you need help?" Harry called out, but the figure did not stop. He quickened his pace to catch up. But just a few seconds later, the figure stopped, turned around, and looked back at him. Harry froze. This was no ordinary person. Her eyes were deep, like a black hole swallowing all light. And then, right before his eyes, she disappeared completely. Harry returned home, but the face and gaze of the woman haunted him for many years. He began to believe that Borley Rectory was not just a house, but a place hiding secrets not meant for the living. Another strange phenomenon that the Bull family often faced was the sound of bells ringing at night. The church bell of Borley Rectory was hung in a hidden corner, and no one could reach it without passing through a long, dark corridor. But the bell rang regularly at midnight, waking the entire family. One time, Harry decided to investigate the source of the bell. He stayed up all night, sitting in the living room, his eyes fixed on the corridor leading to the bell's location. At exactly 12 o'clock, the bell rang, loud and clear, as if someone were pulling it with all their might. Harry took a lantern and quickly walked towards the bell area. But when he arrived, he found no one. The room was empty, no one in sight, but the bell kept ringing, and the sound sent chills down his spine. "How can this be?" Harry whispered, but there was no answer after that. The bell rang more frequently, not only at night, but also during the day. Guests visiting the house also heard the sound, and some even claimed to have seen the bell's pull cord moving by itself, as if an invisible hand were holding it. The Bull family had to face not only the mysterious sounds, but also the fleeting figures in the house. A maid once said that she frequently saw a tall, dark figure standing at the end of the hallway at night. "Mr. Bull, are you standing there?" she asked. But the dark figure did not reply. It just stood still, motionless. As if observing her, she gathered her courage and approached. But the dark figure disappeared right before her eyes, leaving a cold chill running down her spine. Later, other family members also began to see this dark figure. Once, when Harry was about to go to bed, he felt as though someone was standing beside his bed. When he opened his eyes, he saw the dark figure standing silently in the corner of the room. its eyes seeming to gleam in the dark. Harry jumped up, turned on the light, but the dark figure vanished, leaving the room empty. Another phenomenon that the Bull family all experienced were recurring horrifying dreams. In these dreams, they often saw a woman dressed in religious robes standing beside the bed, her face filled with sorrow. One night, Harry dreamed that the woman came closer, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "Find me, I am still here." When he woke up, Harry found a faint handprint imprinted on his shoulder, as if someone had truly touched him in his sleep. The strange phenomena at Borley Rectory grew more numerous, causing the Bull family to live in fear for many years. Despite their attempts to ignore it, the darkness of the house seemed to grow stronger, engulfing every corner. Harry Bull passed away in 1927, and his family left Borley Rectory shortly afterward. But what they experienced, there was only the beginning of a series of horrifying events that future residents would have to face. The story of the haunted nun whispers from the past. Among all the legends and mysterious phenomena at Borley Rectory, the story of the cursed nun is one of the most eerie and haunting. The spirit of this woman, with her never-ending sorrow, seems to have become part of the mansion, forever wandering the haunted grounds. It is said that before Borley Rectory was built, the land was home to an ancient convent. There, a young nun fell into a forbidden love affair with a friar. In those times, emotional relationships between friars and nuns were considered a serious sin, seen as a betrayal of their sacred vows to God. When the affair was discovered, both were subjected to brutal punishments. The friar was expelled from the convent and later disappeared mysteriously, with no one knowing whether he was alive or dead. The nun, according to reports, was executed in a brutal manner, buried alive within the brick walls of the convent as punishment for the sin she had committed. It is believed that this painful and unjust death prevented the nun's spirit from finding peace. When Borley Rectory was built on that very land, her presence began to affect those who lived there. The nun was often seen along the trail in the garden, where the path once led to the ancient convent. Locals claim to have frequently seen a figure of a woman in a black robe, her face sorrowful, walking slowly in the dim light of dawn or dusk. On one occasion, a young couple passed through the area at twilight. The woman and the couple saw the silhouette of a woman in religious garb standing at the side of the road, her hands clasped as if praying. As she approached, the figure turned to look at her, her eyes empty, as if there was no life, the woman recalled. But what sent chills down my spine was that she seemed to hover above the ground. In an instant, she vanished, leaving a cold, bone-chilling sensation. Residents of Borley Rectory not only saw the nun's figure, but also heard mysterious whispers, often occurring at night when everyone was deep in sleep. A maid once recounted that, during a late-night shift, she heard soft footsteps echoing from the hallway. Thinking someone in the house was walking about, she went to check, but the hallway was completely empty. Suddenly, she heard a voice, faint like a breath. "Help me, please." She turned around trembling, but saw no one. She felt a cold draft brush past her shoulder, and in that moment, she heard a sobbing cry from somewhere in the darkness. In 1930, when Harry Price, a famous paranormal investigator, came to investigate Borley Rectory, he recorded another chilling phenomenon related to the nun. One night, during an experiment in the basement, a member of his team saw a faint figure seemingly embedded in the brick wall. It was a woman, the person reported. She stood there, motionless, as if trapped within the wall. I had the feeling she wanted to escape but couldn't. Later, Harry Price found an old diary belonging to a clergyman who had once lived at Borley Rectory. In it, the clergyman described hearing knocking sounds from the brick walls of the house every night. He believed it was the nun, buried alive, trying to cry for help from within. When the Foister family moved into Borley Rectory in 1928, Mary Ann Foister, the wife of Father Lionel Foister, frequently saw strange writings appear on the walls of the house. These scrawlings, seemingly written by an invisible hand, contained pleas for help Help me. I am imprisoned. Forgive me." Marianne tried multiple times to clean off these writings, but they would reappear, growing more numerous and clearer each time. This left her living in constant panic and fear. It is believed that the nun's spirit could never rest due to her unjust and painful death. The supernatural phenomena related to her were not mere rumors, but have been documented over the decades by witnesses, from locals to professional investigators. The nun is not just a shadow, but a haunting reminder of the crimes and suffering of the past. Each time she appears, she brings not only fear, but also a cry for help that no one can answer. If one day you stand before the ruins of Borley Rectory and see the silhouette of a woman in religious garb, remember that she is not alive. And if you hear whispers from the darkness, ask yourself, do you have the courage to listen? The tragic end. Borley Rectory was not only the center of rumors, but also the site of a haunting conclusion. As if it had been consumed by the darkness it had contained for decades in 1939, a shocking event occurred. The mansion was completely destroyed in a horrific fire. The blaze broke out on a cold night. When no one was there, the fire seemed to spread unusually quickly, licking every corner of the house and turning everything to ash within hours. Witnesses recalled that, despite the towering flames, they still saw a shadowy figure moving back and forth inside the mansion. Some even heard piercing screams coming from the fire, as though the trapped spirit was wailing in anguish. The official cause was recorded as an accident. A lantern had fallen to the floor and ignited a fire. However, the locals had a different story. They believed the fire was no accident. Some thought it was the act of the nun spirit, a final attempt to erase the place that had held her for centuries as the embers smoldered. Even more horrifying things began to appear. During the cleanup of the wreckage, workers discovered a hidden cellar beneath the foundation of the mansion. As they dug deeper, a shocking sight emerged: fragments of human bones, hastily buried in the ground. The nearly complete skeleton of a woman lay mixed with rubble and broken pieces of brick. The news spread quickly, and the townspeople believed this was the skeleton of the legendary nun. A local priest was invited to perform a burial ritual, hoping this would release her spirit and end the supernatural occurrences at Borley Rectory. However, the ritual seemed to bring no peace as expected. Some insisted that even after the skeleton was buried, they still sensed the presence of something. Unusual footsteps, mysterious lights, and a feeling of being watched in the area continued to occur, as if to remind everyone that the place was forever cursed. Another strange detail was that fragments of the mansion were sold for reuse in other buildings. But those who owned them often faced misfortune, accidents, illness, and vivid dreams of the raging fire. It is hard to say whether Borley Rectory truly ended its story after the fire, or if it simply found another way to continue spreading its haunting influence. One thing is certain: though it vanished from the surface of the earth, its darkness still lingered in the minds of those who had heard its story. Today, the land where the mansion once stood is now just a silent void. But that silence only makes it more unsettling. The locals still avoid walking past at night. They say that on cloudy, moonlit nights, if you listen closely, you can hear the faint sound of a bell ringing from afar. Even though no bell remains, some curious people have camped overnight on the grounds, hoping to find evidence of the supernatural. And a few of them fled in the middle of the night, pale-faced and speechless, leaving behind a short note: "Don't come back." Larnac Castle, the mysterious story of souls that have not passed on. Larnac Castle, a place not only famous for its ancient beauty, but also as the home of souls that have not been able to pass on. Larnac Castle was built in the late 19th century by William Larnac, a powerful businessman and politician of New Zealand. He wanted to build a house as a symbol of his wealth and status. However, no one could have imagined that this grand structure would carry with it a painful history and tragedies that could never be erased. After the castle was completed, William brought his wife, Eliza, and children to live in the new home. But the joy was short-lived when Eliza passed away from illness, leaving William in indescribable grief. This loss changed him forever. From that moment, strange and eerie phenomena began to occur at Larnach Castle. The shadow of Eliza, the eternal soul. Larnach Castle is not only the home of the Larnach family, but also the site of tragic events. Eliza, the beloved wife of William, passed away suddenly in 1887. Her death left an unhealable wound in the heart of William, the loving husband, overwhelmed with grief. William could not overcome this loss, and perhaps it was this pain that created a supernatural connection that remains unexplained to this day. After Eliza's death, strange events began to occur in Larnach Castle. One of the most terrifying phenomena was the appearance of Eliza's shadow in the very bedroom where she once lived. One night, Sarah, a female tourist from Auckland, was visiting the castle with her family. When she entered Eliza's bedroom, she felt a chilling cold that sent shivers down her spine. Suddenly, a strange feeling overtook Sarah's mind. She felt as if someone was standing right behind her. When she turned around, she saw no one, but the cold still lingered in the air. This feeling is so strange. It's like something is staring at me. I could feel a cold breath, like a breeze passing through, Sarah recalled. Then, unexpectedly, a faint figure appeared in the corner of the room. She looked closely and saw a woman in a white dress, with long flowing hair, standing silently by the window, her gaze seemingly directed outside. The figure did not say a word, simply standing there, as if waiting for someone to return. Sarah hurriedly turned away, but when she looked back again, the figure had completely vanished. By this point, she could not believe what she had seen, but the strange sensation still lingered in her mind. She immediately left the room, too frightened to return. Another tourist, Peter, also witnessed this phenomenon. He recounted that one dark night, he was standing in the living room, looking out toward the large window. Suddenly, he felt someone was watching him from outside the window. At that moment, he saw no one, but he could sense the presence of a spirit. Shadows seemed to move across the window, creating a ghostly image. Peter dared not approach, instead standing at a distance, shivering as he watched. The continual appearance of Eliza's shadow, along with the eerie sensations experienced by visitors, has caused Larnach Castle to be known as a haunted place, where souls remain unrest. The soul of William, the haunting suicide. Eliza's death was a great tragedy for William Larnach, but the next tragedy came from his own life. After his wife's death, William could not overcome the pain, but life did not stop for him. In 1891, he remarried a woman named Hannah, but this marriage could not bring him joy. William continued to remember Eliza, and her presence in his mind darkened everything. In 1898, with the unbearable mental anguish, William decided to end his life by suicide right in the castle he had built. Why he chose to end his life in this house, which had witnessed so much pain and tragedy, remains a question without an answer. But after William's death, strange occurrences continued to happen at Larnach Castle, haunting those who lived in and visited the castle. One story that shocked the tourism community was about a group of tourists who visited Larnach Castle in the 1930s. When they reached the upper floor, where William had died, they suddenly felt an unusual chill in the air. One of the members of the group, John, recounted his experience. I felt a chill from behind me. At first, I thought someone was standing near me, but when I turned around, I saw no one. However, the sensation haunted me throughout the tour. As I got closer to William's bedroom, I felt like someone was watching me. Shortly after, the entire group heard footsteps echoing from the stairs. Even though no one in the group had moved, the footsteps seemed to be drawing closer, creating a heavy and terrifying atmosphere. When they looked back, they saw no one, but the footsteps continued, as if an invisible presence was still walking alongside them. Late in the evening, when they approached the area where William had ended his life, a shadowy figure appeared in his bedroom. Tourist Mary, who was standing near the window, could see a faint figure of a man standing there. She described the figure as resembling William, wearing an old shirt, with empty eyes, as if he were lost in his own space. I couldn't move. His eyes stared at me as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't. When I blinked, the figure disappeared. Mary dared not leave immediately, and the eerie, cold feeling stayed with her until she and the group left the castle. Since then, the story of William's soul has been recounted by visitors to the castle, as a reminder of the tragedy and unrest of souls who cannot find peace in Larnach Castle. Larnach Castle is not just an ancient castle with magnificent beauty, but also a place filled with mystery and the supernatural. Restless souls, strange noises, and shadowy figures still appear here, making it one of the most haunted castles in the world. Do you have the courage to visit this castle on a dark night, to experience the inexplicable presence of souls who have not found peace? Loftus Hall Mansion, Wexford, Ireland, where the ghost rises. Loftus Hall, an ancient mansion located in Wexford, Ireland, has long become one of the most famous haunted locations in the country. Built in the 13th century, Loftus Hall not only stands out with its ancient architecture, but also with mysterious stories of restless spirits that have never found peace. Today, we will explore two true stories, strange events that have made Loftus Hall such a haunted place that no one dares to enter alone. The mysterious man and the unexplainable shadow. On a dark and stormy night, heavy clouds covered the sky above Loftus Hall. The powerful storm was accompanied by the howling winds that screamed through the windows, making the interior of the mansion feel even more silent and gloomy. Inside the large house, the Tottenham family was gathered around the fireplace in the living room, warm and at peace after a long day. But little did they know that that night would be one they would never forget. Amid the stillness, a sudden knock on the door shattered the silence of the house. The family members looked at each other, astonished, as no one had expected a visitor on such a stormy night. The Tottenham, one of the family members, was the first to step forward and open the door. When the door was opened, they were greeted by a strange man dressed in a fine suit, though his face bore a distinct weariness, as if he had traveled a long distance through the storm. I apologize for the intrusion, but the storm outside is too severe. May I seek shelter for the night? The man said, his voice deep but unfamiliar, as though something was amiss behind each word he uttered. Despite being a friendly family, they could not refuse him given the fierce storm outside. Mr. Tottenham, the head of the family, quickly invited him in. No one suspected anything about the man. He appeared polite and very kind, making no one feel uneasy at first. After the man entered, the Tottenham family served him dinner, and he joined in their games while the cozy conversation drifted on. However, there was something that made the atmosphere in the room feel heavy and strange. The entire family could sense an unspoken tension, as though they were in a place that was not truly their own home, especially Anne, who always felt an odd gaze following her from the stranger. Although the man acted very politely, his eyes were constantly fixed on everyone, particularly her, and couldn't understand why. But she felt as though a shadow was following her throughout the evening. At one point during dinner, the man bent down to pick up a card he had dropped while playing cards with the family. As he lifted the card and looked down and noticed something odd, the man's feet were unlike any feet of a normal person. There were no toes, no sign of a regular human foot. His feet, instead of being human, seemed to be made of something else, something shapeless. His feet are not human feet, and screamed in panic, pointing at the man. The entire family was stunned and turned to look. The man slowly stood up, but his gaze did not change. A faint smile curled on his lips, but it was a cold smile, lacking sincerity. No one dared to say anything further. However, the truth had not yet been fully revealed. When Anne looked up again, the man suddenly vanished. There was no sound, no sign indicating that he had left. In the blink of an eye, he was gone from the room as if he had never existed. The door remained closed, with no one having left without making a sound. The Tottenham family was horrified. The entire room became unnervingly silent. No one dared to speak. They ran outside to search for the man, but there was no trace. No one was in the surrounding area. A chilling feeling enveloped everything. Was this man truly human? Or was he a spirit? A ghost? Everything became vague and haunting. Since that night, Loftus Hall began to be known for strange phenomena. Invisible footsteps, faint whispers echoing in the dark, and ghostly figures appearing and disappearing unexpectedly. Although no one could confirm exactly what had happened, those who lived or worked in Loftus Hall shared a strange feeling that was hard to explain. The mysterious man was not only a part of the story, but also the source of countless subsequent strange phenomena. The reason why Loftus Hall became one of the most haunted places in Ireland. And the strangest thing was that no one in the Tottenham family, or anyone who had witnessed the event, could offer a rational explanation for the sudden disappearance of the man, or for the strange feat that and had seen. Sarah and the ghost in the room. The story of Sarah began in the 1900s, when Loftus Hall became a popular tourist destination. Since the mysterious tales surrounding this mansion spread, many people came to experience and learn about the strange phenomena that were rumored. One of these people was Sarah, a woman from Dublin, who decided to visit Loftus Hall during her trip. Sarah was a skeptic. She had never believed in ghost stories and thought the tales about Loftus Hall were just folk legends. However, she couldn't resist the enticing invitation from her friends to tour the famous mansion. Like many others, she also wanted to experience the feeling of living in an old house full of mysteries. She arrived at Loftus Hall on a rainy afternoon, with the sky overcast and a cold, eerie atmosphere enveloping the entire mansion. She was greeted by the manager and guided on a tour of the house. Everything at Loftus Hall exuded an ancient charm, with brown walls, old still-life paintings, and intricately carved wooden doors. However, the strangeness of the place made Sarah feel a bit uneasy. She couldn't explain the strange sensation that was overwhelming her, even though she didn't believe in the supernatural. After the tour, Sarah was shown to her room, a small, cozy room with an antique wooden bed, black velvet curtains, and a dim light from an oil lamp on the table. Everything seemed perfectly normal until nightfall. The atmosphere in the room became eerily quiet. Sarah lay on the bed, trying to sleep after a long day of sightseeing, but she couldn't. A chilling coldness filled the room, even though the window had been tightly closed. She tried to dismiss the feeling, but she grew increasingly tense. Suddenly, she heard a small noise, like footsteps moving across the wooden floor. She sat up quickly, looking around, but only saw darkness and silence. Her heart tightened, unable to deny that something was wrong. After a while, Sarah lay back down, trying to continue sleeping, but the coldness grew stronger. It was late at night, and she felt as if something was lingering around. Just as she closed her eyes, a sharp cold sensation suddenly overtook her body. A cold breeze emanated from the corner of the room, and Sarah startled awake. Opening her eyes, before her, a faint figure appeared. She couldn't see its face clearly, but the ghost was wearing a white dress, its face obscured by long hair, and the dim light from the window only added to the mystery. Sarah blinked, but when she looked again, the ghost was still standing there, near her bed, as if staring directly at her. Although she couldn't hear anything, she felt its presence clearly, a cold, heavy feeling, as if it was sniffing and watching her every move. "Someone is here, watching me." Sarah couldn't take it any longer and screamed, but her voice only echoed in the stillness. When she turned on the light, the ghost had vanished. The room returned to complete silence, with no trace of the ghost. Sarah couldn't explain what had happened, but the fear had completely woken her up. Cold sweat drenched her back, and she felt the entire room now seemed strange and unsafe. Sarah didn't dare to sleep there again. She got up and fled from the room in panic. It felt as though someone was still watching her. When she left the room and went out into the hallway, shadows and strange sounds seemed to appear in every dark corner of the mansion. She quickly ran down the stairs and out of the building, too frightened to look back. Sarah shared her experience with the manager of Loftus Hall and other visitors, and everyone was shocked by her story, although no one could prove the existence of the ghost. Sarah's tale became an essential part of the chilling history of Loftus Hall. Her words were not just a wild story, but a warning about the strangeness and unexplained events that the mansion concealed. Since then, the story of Sarah and the ghost in her room has been passed from person to person, and every tourist who visits Loftus Hall hears about it. Although Loftus Hall has undergone many renovations and changes, the strange phenomena continue to occur, and each time someone visits, they sense the oddness of the place. Ghosts, strange noises, and feelings of unease never stop appearing. Himeji Castle Mansion in Japan. The mystery and the death of forgotten souls. Himeji Castle, also known as the White Heron Castle, is one of Japan's greatest ancient structures, famous for its grand beauty and unique architecture. Built in the early 17th century, this castle attracts tourists not only for its magnificent appearance, but also for the mysterious stories and unsolved mysteries that still remain today. Within its sturdy walls and quiet corridors, there are souls that have not found peace, inexplicable footsteps, and eerie sounds that still echo through the night. But what is the truth? And what is just a legend? The death of Oroku. Oroku, one of the servants in Himeji Castle, who lived in the late 17th century, is a figure whose tragic fate is tied to pain and injustice. She was a kind-hearted woman, loyal to her master's family, but that loyalty led her to pay the ultimate price with her life in a story of tragic misfortune. The legend of Oroku's death is not only a sorrowful tale, but also a dark piece of the castle's history, making Oroku one of the most famous ghosts in Japanese folklore. When Oroku was alive, she was a woman of both beauty and virtue. She was one of the close servants of the castle's master family, working diligently and always devoted to her duties. However, Oroku became involved in a romantic relationship with a powerful man within her master's family, a man of great influence in the court. This relationship became unacceptable to the family. One day, the castle's master, a ruthless and unforgiving man, caught Oroku and the powerful man in a situation he deemed intolerable. Despite there being no evidence of betrayal on Oroku's part, the castle master grew enraged and immediately ordered her to be dealt with. The reason behind Oroku's death remains a mystery. Some say she was falsely accused due to a conspiracy by those around her, while others believe it was the result of jealousy and hatred. Regardless, her death was painful and brutal. She was imprisoned, tortured, and ultimately sentenced to death. The legend tells that, before being thrown into a deep well within the castle grounds, Oroku cried out and begged for forgiveness. But no one came to her aid, and just before losing her life, Oroku uttered a dreadful curse. "I will never find peace. This castle will bear the punishment." That curse marked the presence of a restless soul, a spirit determined to return and avenge its unjust death. After Oroku's death, something strange began to happen. The people living in the castle started to sense her presence. Even though she had died, strange sounds were heard at night, like the sobbing of a woman, the soft sound of footsteps in the empty hallways, and a quiet, desperate calling of her name. Other servants and staff of the castle often saw a faint shadow of a woman gliding through the hallways at night. A former staff member of Himeji Castle recounted that, one night when he had to work late, he heard the clacking sound of wooden sandals on the wooden floor. At first, he thought it was the footsteps of other staff members, but when he turned around, no one was there. He decided to check, but still found no one. However, the footsteps continued. He had to leave the castle in a panic, and when he returned home, he never dared to work alone at night again. Since Oroku's death, many people have reported feeling a strange coldness when entering the areas of the castle where Oroku had once lived. Some visitors, when touring the castle, felt an unexpected cold breeze across their faces, even though there was no wind that day. And every time night fell, the silence enveloping the castle seemed to make the strange sounds even clearer. Once again, the story of Oroku was mentioned when visitors claimed they heard heartrending cries and pleas echoing from somewhere, reverberating in the dark space of the castle. Although these were rumors, The inexplicable feeling remained in the minds of those who witnessed it. With her tragic death, Oroku not only became a victim of injustice, but also a symbol of souls that cannot rest. The legend of her and her curse has haunted Himeji Castle from century to century, turning the castle into a place that not only holds history, but is also tied to inexplicable ghost stories. It can be said that Himeji Castle has become the home of wronged souls, with Oroku being the most powerful haunting spirit among them. Those who dare to step into the castle at night, when everything is silent, might sometimes sense something unusual, an invisible presence, a call from the darkness, or just the cold of a soul that has not yet found peace. And whenever they hear the sound of footsteps echoing through the gloomy hallways, it could very well be Oroku, searching for her release. Strange sounds at night. Himeji Castle is not only famous for its stunning beauty, but also for the strange phenomena that visitors have experienced, especially the unexplainable sounds at night. In the 1990s, a group of Western tourists encountered one of the mysterious events that left them shivering throughout the tour. That night, the weather turned unusually cold, with light rain falling intermittently, and the castle seemed to be shrouded in a thin mist, creating an eerie and strange atmosphere. The group of tourists, consisting of 6 people and led by a local guide, began their tour of the castle at dusk, planning to finish by midnight. At this point, the castle was eerily quiet, with no one else around, creating an oddly silent environment. After visiting the main areas, they decided to move into the less trafficked, dimly lit hallways, areas less visited by tourists and devoid of the bright lighting seen in other parts. As the group walked down a long hallway, suddenly, a sound resembling hurried footsteps echoed from behind. At first, they thought it might be the sound of their own footsteps, but when they stopped and turned around, no one was behind them. They continued walking, but the footsteps resumed, now louder and clearer, as if someone was following them from a distance. A strange feeling began to settle over them, and one person in the group started to feel a rising sense of unease. When the group turned around to check, they couldn't find any signs of anyone. Not even a shadow was visible in the dark hallway. The tourists began to feel an unusual chill, even though there was no wind outside, and no conditions could explain this change. One of the tourists, Anna, the first to feel the cold, described her sensation. At that moment, I felt a sudden rush of cold air hit my face. Even though no windows were open and there was no wind, it felt as if someone was standing right next to me. Anna wasn't the only one who felt this way. Everyone in the group had the sense that something strange was watching them, though no one dared to admit it. As they continued moving forward, the footsteps returned, louder than ever, so clearly that they couldn't deny it was not just a hallucination. One of the tourists, John, who was usually very rational and didn't believe in the supernatural, decided to return to the hallway where the sound had come from to investigate. He went back alone, without telling the group. A few minutes later, while the rest of the group waited in the dark, they began to hear the footsteps again, echoing endlessly in the silence. However, this time, the sound was not limited to footsteps, but was accompanied by a rattling sound, as if something was moving or shifting in the darkness. Coming closer to them, fear within the group grew more palpable. When John returned after a while, he was pale and breathing heavily, as if he had just experienced something terrifying. He recounted in a panicked state, "I don't know what happened, but when I went back to that hallway, no one was there, and the footsteps kept echoing around me. Even though I was standing still, it felt incredibly cold, and I couldn't bear it. I quickly turned back." The sense of unease and fear spread throughout the group as they realized that they were not the only ones hearing those sounds. The footsteps seemed as though someone was following them, moving with each step they took, even though there was no one there. When they returned and shared the story with the castle's security staff, they received a response that no one could clearly explain. One of the longtime security staff calmly recounted the stories he had witnessed. "This castle has many strange noises at night. Those footsteps are not uncommon. We often hear footsteps echoing from long hallways with no one passing through. It could be due to wind passing through cracks. But I can't explain why those footsteps keep repeating like that. The security guard continued. We also often hear noises from the upper floors, especially on rainy nights when no one is up there. Even though we try to check, we find no one. Some tourists believe that the footsteps are not a natural phenomenon or something caused by the environment. According to locals, the sound could be a sign of the spirit of Oroku, the woman who was unjustly killed in the castle. People who have lived around Himeji Castle for many years say that on stormy nights, when the night falls over the castle, the spirits of those who died unjustly may still be present, and the footsteps are just a sign that they have not yet found peace. When a tourist asked about these strange phenomena, a guide responded in a low voice. Those footsteps are not just trivial noises. They are cries for help from souls that haven't found peace. They never leave, and they still linger in this castle, even if we can't see them. With all the strange stories that have occurred at Himeji Castle, it can be said that many have felt the invisible presence in this castle. The strange noises, the feelings of unease, and the watchful eyes from the darkness remain an inseparable part of the stories passed down through generations. Although these curses and spirits may only be part of the legends, it cannot be denied that there is something very real and eerie that still exists within this castle. So, our journey through haunted castles has come to an end. The stories, the restless spirits, still linger in the darkness, leaving an indelible mark on the minds of those who dared to face the mysteries. But have we truly understood these mysteries? Do these castles, with their magnificent appearance and glorious history, really just contain the past? Or are they still home to forgotten spirits, secrets that science cannot explain? That is the question we, the seekers of truth, always ask ourselves. Thank you for following and sharing in the curiosity and courage of stepping into this world with us. If you enjoy such mysterious stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Zen the Storyteller channel to continue accompanying us on our adventures in search of unsolved mysteries. See you in the next video, where the ghosts and stories will continue.